Rini is one of the most amazing social scientists you will ever meet, in part because she can actually speak to engineers and other forms of scientists, which is a rare skill. And Rini has been amazing because she's not only taught me a huge amount, but she certainly shaped a lot of the broader research that's going on within the group, hence the reason for inviting Rini to come and speak to us today. So with that, please put your hands together for the fantastic Rini. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. So, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So, I want to open with two numbers that sit side by side on this slide because together they frame the argument that I'll be making. So, the Democratic Republic of Congo supplies roughly 70% of the world's cobalt, and that is well known. But how much of the value does it capture? Yeah, the mineral that goes into almost every lithium-ion battery that powering the electric vehicles that we are counting so much on our decarbonization strategy is actually just provide 3% of value to Democratic Republic of Congo. This is according to a 2021 study by Bloomberg and the United Nations Economic Commissions for Africa. And alongside that figure, on my right side here, globally, there are 767 active socio-environmental conflicts globally that currently recorded by the Global Environmental Justice Atlas. This directly linked to mineral extraction and mining of building materials like sands and others. And these are not historical conflicts, these are ongoing and rising as global demand for critical mineral accelerates. So these two numbers describe the same problem from two directions. One shows where the value goes, the other shows what gets left behind when it does. So today my talk is about values. And my talk is going to be about whether the governance of critical minerals is capable of changing that relationship. That is to deliver an energy transition that is not only clean, but genuinely fair. So to understand why those two numbers exist side by side, we need to look at what kinds of values are actually present at the mine site and what the current system does with them. And this is, I think, my argument here is that these diverse values underpin the certainty that we need in supplying critical minerals for energy transition. So these three values that I show here on the slides are coming from the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. They give us a useful framework here to differentiate between diverse values. So the first category is instrumental values. These are the economic contributions, resource asset, ecosystem services, income generation, such as royalties, that are currently dominant in mining decisions through cost-benefit analysis. And these are the values that mining governance already recognizes, at least on paper. And all of these are just some mechanisms for capturing instrumental values. But even here, recognition is narrow. The system tends to count what is easy to monetize and quietly ignores what is not. And this is the first problem that we try to capture here in the research that I'm leading, that Sarah mentioned about the Rio Tinto Centre for Future Materials. And then the second category is about relational values. And this is where current governance starts to break down significantly. Relational values are about the meaningfulness of relationship between people and land, between communities and place, sense of belonging, cultural identity, livelihoods that are bound up with specific landscapes and others. And the last one, or the third category, is intrinsic values. The idea that nature has a right to exist independently of what it provides to humans. An example that often being mentioned is how the communities in Peru, it's called Quechua, maybe I'm mistaken how I pronunciate that, but these communities understand the Ausangate mountain there not as a geographical feature, but as a powerful living earth being with its own standing in the world. And this kind of value is not just overlooked, it is structurally excluded from virtually every governance instrument that we currently have in the mining sector. So we have one category recognized but captured narrowly, that is the instrumental values. One frequently overlooked, which is the relational values, and one systematically excluded, which are the intrinsic values. That gradient, they're not accidental. It reflects whose worldviews constructed the governance system in the first place. So this brings me to the core structural argument that I would like to make in this presentation. So the problem here is not only that these values exist and are ignored, the problem is that the governance architectures that currently we have on materials give them no pathway to travel between the production side into the consumption side. So what I want to, in this slide, what I think is the most important and the most under-examined claim in the governance of critical mineral is that the governance of critical mineral is currently very fragmented across its life cycle. There is the exploration, extraction, processing, manufacturing, consumption, etc., circularity. And each stage has its own instrument, its own actors, its own logic, basically its own systems. And they do not speak to each other about values, and especially about all of this diversity of values. The result is a structural asymmetry. So on the production side, the mine side, we have the mine, the community, the territory, and we actually have quite reasonable developed vocabularies and toolbox, if we want to say it's toolbox. There is the free, prior, and informed consent, social license to operate, cultural heritage protections, and others. And these concepts are heavily theorized. I'm an academic, so I like to talk about theories. So there are decades of research and legal frameworks and community advocacy built around them. The problem is not that we lack the language. The problem is that these values have no institutional pathway to downstream sector, to the people and organizations making decisions about consumption. And on the consumption side, the original equipment manufacturer, the investor, the consumers, the regulators, the value language is completely different. It is about brand reputation, it's about ESG ratings, it's about credentials. And these are not equivalent categories to production side of the values. So the production side values I just described here are already heavily theorized and have substantial advocacy behind them. However, the consumption side framing is largely under-theorized. It is about consumer preference, it's about compliance signaling, and sometimes it's about geopolitics. So here is my crucial, currently kind of like hypothesis. While production side values have no institutional pathway downstream, consumption side values do travel upstream. These ESG ratings, procurement requirements, and due diligence standards do reach mining companies. But when they arrive, they do not carry or reflect the values of the communities most affected by this production of or extraction of critical materials. They carry the values of the companies and investors or customers who design the metrics. So we have a one-way flow, and it runs in the wrong directions, especially for the communities bearing the cost of critical mineral extractions and processing. And this asymmetry is precisely what my current research project is trying to name and theorize. We are developing the concept of value laundering. It's coming from money laundering to describe the structural processes by which consumer side compliance signals like ESG ratings or battery passport, if it's about, EV batteries, travel upstream through aggregation layers that strip them of any connection to the specific values affected, affecting communities. The signal arrives at the mine as a binary. It's about compliant or non-compliant. And it has been laundered of its provenance. And this is not just easily a metaphor that we take it for granted. I think it is about a governance mechanism that we need to address. So I would like to stop here by saying that, so what needs to change? Uh, this presentation today is kind of like a beginning of our 3 years project about values in critical mineral supply chains. And I want to be careful here about what I am and I'm not claiming. I have argued that there is a structural asymmetry in how values are recognized across the critical minerals life cycle. I have suggested that the mechanism producing this asymmetry can be named and theorized, and currently we name it as value laundering. But I'm not going to tell you what that I have a ready-made governance solution because we are just starting this year, and we hope by the end of the 3 years that we will be able to offer that governance solutions to this asymmetry in values. So what I want to answer here is that who is responsible for building this governance solution? So to answer this is that everyone in this room and of course, every stakeholder will have different ways of contributing to this governance solutions. For example, for me, academics and as a researcher, I can build the evidence base to understand more about how the communities can co-produce the kind of value feedback or value flows mechanisms that will look more symmetrical from the production side to the consumption side. For policymakers, by redesigning instruments that currently, addressing these dangers of value laundering. And for industry is by treating, free prior informed consent mechanism and community engagement as genuine obligation, not just as a performance, especially not just as, compliance or non-compliance to respond to ESG metrics. So the energy transition will happen. The question is whether the communities bearing its costs will have any meaningful say in how. And by acknowledging and recognizing these value asymmetries between the production side and consumption side, we start to think about how can we reform these governance mechanisms and acknowledging these plural values to ensure certainty in critical mineral supply chain. I think that's it. Thank you, Sarah.
Amazing. Thank you so, so much, Rini. Round of applause. Absolutely brilliant. First question. Those three types of value that you shared with us, was it instrumental, relational, and intrinsic? Do you feel that the majority of people even begin to comprehend what is meant by the relational and the intrinsic values? What do you
Yeah.
think? Is it or how do you get people to actually understand what you're meaning there?
Yeah, I guess I can give an example. The one that is so famous. It happened I was 2020. It was the blowing up of the Juukan Gorge cave
Mhm.
in Australia, a place that is so sacred for the First Nations community in Western Australia. That was blown up despite the protections that happen and all of the legal instruments that supposedly prevent that to happen.
Mm.
So that relationship between the First Nations community to their place, to their significant cultural place, like Gorge, is what we meant by that relational values. So that moment of trust crisis, I guess, between the mining companies and the community was widely, featured in the news, and that I think signaling that the public start to understand it's not all about royalties. There are also another aspect of values that we need to recognize,
Mhm,
which is about that relationship with nature, with land, with biodiversities that are also important.
mhm. Yeah, no, I think it's something, and Juukan Gorge is I mean, it was absolutely terrible what happened there, but is such a good case study to try and explore and begin to in a very tangible way explore different types of value that come through with that. And then
Yeah.
secondly, in terms of your value laundering, which I think is such an awesome term to explore, not least because it's so emotive. It's brilliant.
Well, this is something that, well, I mean, it's just based on discussion between us researchers that are in the project.
Yeah.
It's not yet, based on evidence that, it's just the start of our research. So we cannot say anything significant yet about that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I think, I mean, hey, look, it's a really good way to get people to engage with you, isn't it? I mean, the clickbait value in
Definitely.
that term. Um,
Yeah.
and I think just with that as well, so um, having worked in different aspects of the sector for many years, I think what I really like in terms of what you're portraying is it almost feels like there's a one-way relationship
Hmm.
where the people who are the consumers turn around and say,
Hmm.
right, you lot need to be responsible, you need to
Yeah.
do things properly, etc. But in return, we're still not really seeing, well, what's the reward in
Mhm.
terms of doing things properly? And I say that just through the instrumental value
Yeah.
lens.
Yeah.
But then when you go deeper into the other forms of value, yeah, in terms of the consumers, do you think they even begin to comprehend what this looks like at the beginning of the value chain?
Definitely. Yes, that is definitely the argument here.
Yeah.
Companies respond to the consumer's preference by sometimes simply, tick box exercises, and
Hmm.
we want it to be more than that. That the consumer side's awareness about these diverse values start to inform their behavioral consumerism as well, because there is an article talking about mostly people in the US who use the EV,
Hmm.
who adopt EVs. They don't, like many of them, they don't have awareness about the impacts of, securing critical minerals for the creations of EVs, for example. So there's two ways. Dialogues here, definitely. But currently, what we see is that consumer preference is really what drives companies' behaviors, not yet from the community side.
Yeah, no, exactly. There are a number of questions coming in the chat, but picking one of them, almost at random, comes in from Mark, and Mark is asking, they say we understand you're at the beginning of the research, but do you have any thoughts or hypotheses on what might be the incentives or levers that could improve the pathway from the production side to the consumption side?
Oh, that is a really hard question.
He's
Yes,
asking you for the answers already.
yes. Well, Mark, yeah, we do talk about leverage points in our research, and we try to start identifying some of the governance mechanisms that are existing. For example, the EU C triple D, I think due diligence mechanisms. For example, we try to start having like an analysis about how this existing governance mechanism in the EU, for example, can be like improved.
Mhm.
And then the Irma version 2, I guess, and also so we talk about leverage point, basically ways to find the loopholes to address to make values more visible, basically.
Mm,
Um, and acknowledging the value tensions here between the consumer sides and, I mean, the consumption side and the production side. So, uh, first, of course, acknowledging the value tensions, and then adopting these diverse values in the governance mechanisms, in which we try now to start kind of like identifying which governance mechanism will be really helpful. Uh, so we are in that stage of the research currently, identifying which one. So for example, the IRMA version 2, and then the EU, I forgot the but due diligence mechanisms. Yeah, I need to find it again. Yeah, that's yeah, the leverage point is what I meant here.
brilliant. Thank you very much, Rini. And yes, another clickbait term you used there was that value tensions. That
Mhm.
I think as well describes it so well. So with that, thank you so much, Rini. We really value you coming here today to speak with us. Thank you so much. Good luck with the research. Round of
Yeah.
applause.